Hello, everyone, and welcome to One Chill Report Podcast, episode 162. Mr. Yoder here today, talking about video games, and it's been kind of a weird week. Maybe not that weird, honestly. I mean, maybe last week was weird because I actually played video games, but yeah, I was trying to finish up the PCFX podcast. I was expecting to do that early last week, but unfortunately did not come together quite as quickly as I was hoping to. So pretty much spent most of the week working on that still. I stayed up pretty late on Saturday finishing it up, but as of this Sunday, I think we're pretty much good to go. Right under the the timer on that. So that's going to be going up on Tuesday, and in working on that podcast, I think this is the thing I always, something I may not be super clear when I'm posting those podcasts to listeners, but I'm usually pretty clear with the people I'm participating with, is that those are very much learning experiences for me. I would not say I don't know if I'm a great podcast host per se. I feel like I'm a very loud man who talks over other people too much, but I try, and I'm trying to learn to get better. And so far, I think every podcast I've done, I felt like I've learned something new. And this one, I definitely feel that's the case too. I do feel like this is one of the stronger podcasts I've done in terms of content. I'm maybe not the most well-worded person when it comes to explaining myself. But I think I generally did everything I wanted to do with it, and I think it involved. If you don't know, the other person who participated for the podcast is Matt, who goes under the name Playongo or Filler. So he helped me with that podcast quite a bit. He's been much more involved than probably any other person in the actual production process. So I do appreciate that. I don't get a lot of feedback on the stuff I make. So anytime anybody's like, "Hey, I think this," it's always helpful because it gives me a second to look at something and be like, "Oh, you're right. I need a second set of eyes to understand this kind of thing." So that's been super helpful. So I'm really glad that came together. I think that the biggest thing right now that I'm a little, if I were to go back and do one thing, it would be to start with normalizing the audio in a more correct way, because I think that kind of created some ongoing issues, and I think it still kind of exists in the podcast a little bit, where sometimes the voice level doesn't quite match, and I'm still learning how that works. Especially when we're involving somebody else in the podcast. I think that's been the biggest struggle, is that just trying to match the voice levels for both people, and my dumb voice where like sometimes I start like mumbling like, "Oh, I don't know what I'm talking about," and then I go like, "But," it's like I'm on two ridiculously different level of planes when it comes to my voice. So I think that's probably the biggest thing I would have gone back and done differently. But overall, I'm very happy with the actual show. And if you are interested in the NEC PCFX, I really hope you check it out. It took a lot of work, especially adding video to it. That was, I think it's about an hour worth of video that I added to it, and that was quite the challenge from a variety of places. I ended up having to play quite a few games that I mentioned in the podcast that I haven't played. I was like, okay, I need to get gameplay for this because the gameplay I'm trying to use isn't working for what I need. So I ended up playing through a little bit of a Ruruli. I'm still bad at this name, Ruruli Rarura or whatever. I played probably about like 2 to 3 hours of that. I want to spend a bit more time on that game before I talk about it more formally. I might do a quick play of it actually. So I am stuck in the game right now though, so I got to figure that out, and unfortunately I'm not really sure what to do next. And I looked up, there is a long play available, so I can probably figure it out. But I just need to kind of go through and see what I'm missing and kind of follow their footsteps to make sure I get all the items I need to progress. So I did that, and then the Chojin Heki Zero Agar. I'm not a big shoot 'em up fan, so that didn't really super appeal to me too much. But I did enjoy it. The biggest trouble I had is I'm bad at burning games properly, so I basically all the cutscenes are broken in it for me for my copy. So I need to get some smaller discs. Vink with Famicom Dojo and Japan Retro Direct had mentioned that if I do like 640 megabyte discs rather than 700 megabyte discs, typically the I guess the burn is more accurate. I don't know the best way to put it. So I might try to get some smaller discs and see if that helped. But yeah, that took up the majority of this week, and unlike what I said last week, I was like, I'm gonna play Shining Resonance immediately. I did not do that this weekend. So I did play more Halo 3. Actually finished Halo 3's campaign. So it's funny because like I haven't played Halo 2 since it basically came out. So I was probably like, 14, 15 years old. I have no idea what's going on with the story in Halo 3 at all. So there's like a bunch of these characters that just like suddenly show up, and I'm like, I remember them slightly, but I have no idea. I have no idea what the Halos are, to be honest with you. I don't know anything. So I'm basically have my brain turned off for that story at this point. I was kind of surprised that the story is so focused on continuing from Halo 2. Like, I feel like with most sequels, usually you see like a story arc that is focused within a particular game, but it has connections out to previous games, where Halo 3 feels like Halo 2 Part 2 in terms of how it's told, at least. Like it just picks up right where you left off, basically, and it never really stops to try to explain what you're doing, because it very much assumes you have played Halo 2 recently at the very least. So not 15 years apart from when it came out. So I had fun with that, though. I enjoyed that game. I mentioned it last week, but I think like the cooperative in that game is just really goofy and fun, and in ways that I enjoyed. And we're going to go ahead and start up Halo ODST or Lost Planet 2 sometime soon. So that seems like it's going to be the next kind of multiplayer game. And then I also played a good chunk of time of Dragon Marked for Death again this weekend. I was originally thinking about doing a Dragon Marked for Death quick play somewhat sooner rather than later, but I kind of want to see more of the end game of Dragon Marked for Death before I kind of, set my thoughts in stone. I'm not going to do like a video review or anything like that. I think if I do anything video related for Indie Creates, unless another game just kind of captures my heart, it'll probably just be like a general Indie Creates video, kind of expressing the point I make in the Mighty Number 9 video about how Indie Creates characters move and feel that make them feel so unique. I think that would be a good backbone for a video maybe someday. But speaking of which, I have been like looking at doing more variety in videos. You may have noticed with like the PlayStation 2 research piece, the Chibi Robo research piece last year, I might look into doing more like opinion editorial stuff for video as well. So I'm probably going to update the YouTube channel to have like a featured content section. I think that would make the most sense rather than breaking stuff down by individual types of content. I mean, the playlist will still be broken down by individual types of content, but I think that having a centralized one that's like, this is the big piece of content for the month. This is a multi-tap podcast. This is a review. This is a research piece. Any of those things. I think that would be good to have at the top of the YouTube page. So anyways, Dragon Marked for Death, I think I'll do a quick play for that. Nothing really new thoughts-wise there, other than I thought we had completed all the quests in the game, basically, or at least the majority of them. We ended up running into quite a few new quests. I think I'm on the final quest now, though. So we do need to grind a bit. I think it's like a level 50 quest, and maybe it's level 45. I think it's level 50, and we're level like 41. So just need to grind that out a bit. So that's pretty much all I did in terms of gameplay playing between the PCFX stuff, Halo 3, and Dragon Marked for Death. I think I might do a quick focus on Ruru Leave or Rura just because I kind of want to finish that game. It doesn't seem like a very long game, and I've gotten a good chunk of time into it. So I think I just want to kind of wrap that up and then kind of move on from it. In terms of news this week, I guess kind of to roll into it, Dragon Marked for Death got a PS4 release announced, which is somewhat exciting for me because I do like Dragon Marked for Death a lot, and I would be interested in trying that game out with 3 or 4 other people. I've definitely been heavy in pitching it to the other group of people I play games with that are 3 to 4 people, and being on PS4 is definitely going to make it a lot easier for all of them to kind of get together and want to participate in it. I'm curious how Dragon Marked for Death scales from a 2 to 4 player level, because right now I'm just playing 2 players with Tim, but it's not something that's going to happen before the quick play. I can say that for sure. There's kind of a lukewarm feeling on Dragon Marked for Death in that group, and I'm not 100% sure why. I think some of it comes from kind of some general issues that the game had around launch, so I think that might be part of why. But anyways, Other news, though, Nintendo had a Treehouse stream. The majority of the Treehouse was focused on the Paper Mario and the Origami King. I didn't watch the whole thing, but I think I saw what I wanted to see personally, which was the battle system. It's very cool, and I'm not sure if they had showed this off a lot beforehand or not. But basically, it's like this little circular ring that Mario's in the center of, and the enemies kind of surround him on this ring. And you can rotate this ring to put the enemies in like in a row or like a particular pattern. And the different types of attacks you have attack enemies within certain groupings. So like if you do the jump attack, it attacks everything in front of you in a straight line. So before the fight starts, you get 30 seconds to line everybody up in a straight line, and then you can go ahead and use jump to go ahead and hit all three of them. And then if they use a hammer, it's like the 4 squares in front of you in like a like cone kind of fashion. So you want to get all of them moved into like a square in front of you. And then if you don't defeat them in that turn, they then spread back out on that ring, and you have to kind of readjust it until you get it properly again. And I thought that was a really, really cool battle mechanic. But the thing that I think is still kind of the problem with these games, and it was a problem that I saw in Sticker Star, and I assume is carried over into Color Splash, is like this idea that they still don't, like, even though they're doing turn-based battle systems in these games, they don't want it to be an RPG still. I don't think there's any leveling in the game still or anything like that. It's kind of weird how just like that little bit there, I think, kind of paints everybody's vision of what that game is. But I do think it makes it so the battles feel kind of unimportant in a lot of ways, which is kind of a weird thing to say that, and like, but maybe because just like it's in such a JRPG style to have it so you're not getting stronger from these fights. In the case of Sticker Star, you literally were like burning your inventory on these fights, so it was a detriment to get into fights with characters and to battle. So you typically would want to just try to get away, although I think you did lose stickers if you ran away too. So it was like, don't ever get caught in a fight because there's no benefit to you getting caught in a fight. I think you get money or something like that. I could see that. And yeah, so it's just kind of weird that, like, at least from what I saw, it seems like Nintendo's still kind of going this direction of like, we don't want Paper Mario to be like the RPG series Paper Mario 1 or the Thousand Year Door, which I'm not a huge Paper Mario Thousand Year Door fan. I liked Paper Mario 64 when I was a kid, but I don't think I have any particular like personal affinity for it right now. That might change over time if I ever revisit it or something, but right now I don't really have any strong feelings for it. But yeah, it's just strange to see like there's just such a vocal like, don't do this with Paper Mario in the gaming community, at least. But then Nintendo's just like, no, this is what we're doing with this franchise. All of you can get out. I'm curious if that is reflected in sales in any way. If the driving force of that is like, well, Paper Mario wasn't selling well before, so we need to find a way for it to be like a knock out of the park hit, where if you make it like more traditional JRPG, you're already limiting its audience. But I feel like JRPGs are popular again, unlike, in the late 2000s and early 2010s where JRPGs kind of had a I don't want to say a bad taste to them in terms of the mainstream, but I think people were not thinking about JRPGs within the mainstream gaming area. The majority of people. But either way, I think it looks fine. I think I would enjoy it if I sat down and played with it. I also enjoyed Sticker Star, to be honest with you, but it also was a game that I kind of just fell off of at some point. And it wasn't a bad game. I just wasn't loving it either, so I just kind of moved on from it. So the other thing that happened, which I maybe shouldn't have, but I found it kind of funny, was in the announcement for this Nintendo Treehouse event, they're like, hey, WayForward's going to announce a new video game. And everybody's like, oh my god, WayForward is going to work on a Nintendo IP. And then Nintendo came out later and was like, oh, absolutely not. They're working on a third-party property, but their game will be showed during our Treehouse event. And then after that, it was like a Bakugan game, which that game looks all right. I'm always interested in games that do like a very Pokemon collect monsters or in this case, little robot kind of characters. Or they're kind of big in this game, actually. I think Bakugan, they're typically like these little like balls that kind of roll out or something. I could be wrong about this. I may be mixing this up with like one of the 30 billion other franchises that are like this. But I think it looks kind of neat. Like you have these two giant fighting robots, and you kind of go around in the area and kind of collect different like pieces of energy from the environment, which it seems like it fuels your monster's attack gauge. I thought it looks really cool, but at the same time, well, really cool for what it was. It's a licensed Switch game that's coming out. It reminded me visually a lot of the Yokai Watch 4 as well. But people were very unhappy with that answer, and unfortunately, just like a massive amount of like downvoting and stuff on the video. So it's one of those things that I'm just like, I think people get too invested in these things sometimes. At least for me, I usually go in with like a minimum expectations of they will show something, but I don't think they'll show anything crazy. Admittedly, I think part of that's because I don't really need to see the stuff that other people want to see. I saw people being like, oh yeah, new Wario Land, have WayForward make that. And, I think it's cool, do a Wario Land game. I think that's fine. I don't think I would play a Wario Land game, but that's because there's plenty of Wario Land games that I have not played. So I get that people get excited about that, and I think the kind of the distance I have is that unless you're on stage announcing Clubhouse games or Phantom Dust 2, you're probably not going to catch my attention. I was actually kind of excited though about Bakugan, specifically because a while ago I picked up the Wii game Bakugan Battle Brawlers for like $1, and I actually really enjoyed what I played of that. Not a lot of it. I did not play a ton of it. I think there's a PS3 version as well. But I thought that was a really cool game, and seeing another game that is like that, but also, trying to do something very different from what that game was trying to do, I think is kind of fun. But, those kind of games I always want to get into, but I never just get around to them. I now am the proud owner of Yokai Watch 2 and Yokai Watch 3, and I want Yokai Watch 4. I have not played a single second of Yokai Watch, though. Well, that's a lie. I played a demo of the original Yokai Watch when that came out on 3DS in America. But yeah, those kind of games are like always high on my list of I'd like to see what they're doing different from like a Pokemon, because I'm not a big Pokemon fan. But just the time commitment just means I got to sit down and actually make it work at some point. But yeah, I think the Bakugan game looks fun. I'm glad they're doing it. I kind of have a soft spot for licensed games made by companies like WayForward, like Inti Creates. These like, competent developers working on a brand that, probably would usually get shoveled out to somebody else. So having a good developer working on those kind of things, I think is always an encouraging thing. And the last news story we have here is Castlevania Grimoires of Souls shutting down on September 9th, unfortunately. If you haven't been following this game, this was a game that was announced quite a while ago. For mobile phones, it's kind of like in some ways it's similar to Harmony of Despair, where it's like this kind of loot-based Castlevania game. At least that's the impression I get from it. But it was more focused on shorter bite-sized bits of gameplay. Clearing out certain rooms in quests in a multiplayer fashion with a bunch of different characters like, Charlotte, Jonathan, Alucard, Simon Belmont, all those things. And I thought this game actually looked pretty cool. I never really wanted to got like too excited about trying it out because I was not a huge fan of it being on touchscreen controls. I think if it came out on the Switch, I'd be more interested in checking it out with actual physical controls, me being an old man. And I think I would have tried it if my phone actually supported it, but I think I have a Samsung Galaxy S7, which is pretty old at this point, and unfortunately I could not actually run the game on there, so I never actually got around to checking it out, and it's a shame to see that it looks like it's shutting down, I think less than a year after it came out. It has not been out very long, and yeah, I really know of maybe one or two hardcore Castlevania fans I follow on Twitter that have been playing it regularly. It's a great looking game, I think. It's not particularly technically crazy looking, but I think the aesthetic direction of it and like the character models and kind of the attention to detail to some of them was really appealing. So it's a shame to see that go. I don't really know personally how to back up those kind of things like mobile games. I did at some point try to back up Final Fantasy Grandmasters when that shut down, or at least back up the client side stuff of the game. Obviously with these games there's a server side aspect that no one can really do without actually looking, without doing packet sniffing kind of stuff and seeing what's happening there. But I don't know much about it to really invest time in to figure it out. So I hope if somebody in the Castlevania community is like, oh no, we need to save this video game. So So yeah, I think speaking of archiving, actually though, I did do a Love and Berry OVA archive.org upload. So essentially, Love and Berry had a like 40 to 50 minute OVA where it had a few CG like dancing song stuff on it, but it also had this anime plot that I really don't know what's going on. I mean, I haven't really played any Love and Berry in general, honestly. So I'm pretty unfamiliar with the series outside of just what I've experienced from afar from the series so far. But I did go ahead and buy the OVA on DVD. I went ahead and ripped the disc, uploaded it to archive.org. Also scanned all the assets that came with it. So pretty happy that's on there. And the person I bought it for and scanned it for and ripped it for, they're working on a fan translation for it to be in English. So obviously, yeah. I'll never say that that's a commitment from somebody when we're working on like a fan project like this, but they seem pretty committed to wanting to get it done fairly soon. So going to be keeping an eye out for that. I'll probably mention that if it comes out. I did watch it without subs and it seems pretty cute from what I did see. I wasn't like, fixated on it, but I had it on the background while I was working on the PCFX podcast stuff, just checking out what was going on in it. Some cute outfits in there too. I think I personally prefer the anime look of the characters, the like Dreamcast looking Naomi board looking 3D models from Love and Berry. It doesn't have particular charm for me, but I do love how Castlevania 64 characters look, so there's maybe a place in my heart to love how they look in the game. But from afar, it's just like, ooh, those models are pretty rough. So yeah. And I'm also looking at maybe going ahead and uploading the Ojo-sama Susomu Debutante Detective Corps DVD. I need to scan the actual cover still and any of the stuff that's inside of it. And maybe also the First Kiss Story OVA as well. I kind of, especially with like Debutante Detective Corps, because it actually came out in the US, I was a little hesitant to go ahead and upload it. But as far as I can tell, they're not selling it in any way or not streaming it anyway. So I don't get the impression they care to re-release whatever this DVD is. So I think I probably am in the safe to go ahead and upload those. If I don't know what would happen if they decided they would come take it down, but if they want to take it down, that's fine by me, I guess. The one thing I might want to consider doing with First Kiss Story is, and I need to figure out like what the ethics would be behind this, is there is a First Kiss Story YouTube upload of the OVA, and that has subtitles for it, but the YouTube quality is not great, and I've ripped the DVD for First Kiss Story, so that's a higher quality rip, obviously. So I don't really know the ethics of like having somebody else's subs and then putting them on a higher quality video version of the OVA. I might see if I can figure out who did it and see if I could contact them in some way. But I'm guessing this thing was subbed 20 years ago at this point. So I mean I don't know if that for sure, but I think it's been a long time since somebody subbed that. So I'm kind of interested in doing that, but I always will find room in my life for projects. Speaking of that, a couple of things that I'm kind of looking at here in the future. A couple other podcasts in the future I'm thinking about. One is pretty much set in stone, or at least, it seems very likely it's going to move forward. It relies on me taking some time though to kind of research a game and get an outline put together for it. So it's going to take a little effort on my part. There's some new developments in the Chibi Robo scene in terms of what's going on with Skip. I'm going to go ahead and I think make an update video for that because enough has changed that I can go ahead and update or provide a formal update, I think. And it's been almost about a year. I think by the time I actually put it out, it will be close to a year since I actually originally published that video. So I think that's going to be a fairly short project. I'm hoping to turn that around pretty quickly, but I have not started it yet, other than, noticing what those new updates were and what I would like to include in the video. And then I'm also, trying to finish up the Wizard of Oz Beyond the Yellow Brick Road review that I've been talking about forever, and Valkyria Revolution is also on that roadmap too. And so in saying all that, though, that kind of means that 2020 is pretty much filled out at this point. I think that leaves me one slot for the end of the year to put another thing in there. But if I stick to the content that I am looking at right now, I think we're pretty much see what our 2020 is. I will not say, you know, maybe this is something I can reconsider. But I think the reality is that the things I'm doing right now, I'm actually very excited to publish things about. I was kind of hoping we'd have a different focus this year in terms of videos. But you know, we have stuff out there. You know, I'm pretty happy with how the PlayStation 2 backwards compatibility video turned out, despite it being like a 48-hour turnaround time. I don't regret that video. I very much enjoyed it. Does it have a lot of value in the world? Probably not, but I think it's one of those things that it's just one of those little small weird things that I think I personally enjoy covering, being like, hey, Alice in Cyberland. I got a chance to talk about Alice in Cyberland for the PS1, which was a fun thing. Also, here's this weird thing that happens, and I'm going to share with you these cute karaoke scenes. Like I get to slip in some fun things in there, you know, despite it being a video about like, hey, PS2 backwards compatibility is weird. And I also get to talk about Thousand Arms a bit, which if you don't know, I did do an article about Thousand Arms a long time ago. Oh, a couple articles actually, but more recently, a couple years ago, I did one. And it's a fine article, but it didn't really have any like gruff to it. And you know, I'm not going to say that what was in this video is like really showcasing Thousand Arms or anything like that, but I got to mention it, and I got to talk a little bit about what the game is, and then also show kind of the fun little experience I had with the soundtrack in that game. So I think this year I'm pretty happy with what we have coming out. But I think maybe just the sheer fact that I'm looking at this, you know, we're a little over halfway through the year, and I'm like, my year's kind of decided at this point. So we'll see. There's definitely things I wanna do more. I would like to rev up the quick plays again soon. I feel like that has been maybe one of the bigger drop offs this year that I wish I had more of a focus on, but I haven't made a lot of progress in games in general. So that's been my other kind of, you know, issue. I was supposed to have Xenoblade Chronicles X finished by June. That was my plan, and I'm not even halfway through the game at this point. So yeah, anyways, if you're stuck around this year, thanks for sticking around. I hope the second half of the year is interesting to you too. I think that Chibi Robo project is going to probably be the next project in the short term. It's going to be pretty much just an update to the previous one. So if that previous video did not interest you about Chibi Robo and the developer Skip, then I'm going to guess this one's probably not going to interest you either. Come next month, just listen to the PCFX podcast again or something. I don't know. But yeah, please listen to the PCFX podcast. I'm really happy with how that turned out. And then hopefully that, you know, my goal with that podcast was to kind of offer an accessible kind of explanation of what that system is, and try to move it away from the narrative that you know, as recently of this year, you know, see people still saying that it's like an erotic game machine. It only has FMV games on it. It's not something that's worth playing. And I'm not going to sit there and tell you should go buy PCFX, but there's some interesting games on there, you know, even outside of just the accessible ones. I think it's worth talking about, you know, what that system was doing and kind of the tone it had and the types of games that ended up coming out on it. And even some of the games we talk about on the PCFX did get ported to the PlayStation 1 and Saturn later, but I think those games were very much informed by the background of what that system was in some ways. So yeah, I feel like I just kind of rambled a bit. So thanks for coming. OneControlPort.com is the website. That's really this podcast. If this is your first podcast with this one, this podcast is a complete like audio or of like word dump from myself about the things I've been doing lately, basically. so yeah. But yeah, OneControlPort.com is the website. If you didn't see last week, the Quest 64 stream did not work out. I was having some issues with my 64. I picked up some cleaning supplies to hopefully get that working. But I did play a PS1 game called Tiny Bullets. And this is a game I was not really planning to spend a lot of time with anytime in the near future. But it's a very accessible, like Zelda-style game, like 3D Zelda-style game in some ways. And I had played it a while ago, and I really enjoyed what little I played of it. So to suddenly have to jump into it all of a sudden because the stream wasn't working out was a fun thing. And it's a fairly short game too, as far as I can tell. I think we're about halfway through it. So I think this next week we're gonna do Tiny Bullets again and try to finish that up. And then And then after that, we'll try to get back to Quest 64. I just got to test, with the cleaning stuff and then make sure that the game's running fine so we don't have to worry about ejecting immediately like we did have to do with this stream. I'm also having some internet issues recently too, so if the VODs that are recorded afterward are a little bit choppy, sorry about that. I've reached out to my ISP and they haven't been particularly helpful. Unsurprising, ISPs in America. But yeah, PCFX podcast tomorrow at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And then Thursday, we have the stream at 7 p.m. Pacific time if you want to check out some tiny bullets. Other than that, I hope you have a great week. Bye.